Okay, good late afternoon. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to give you folks a briefing on, in terms of what our activities were last night as this situation unfolded in the area of 43rd and Hour, Sherman Boulevard, this 43rd Street. And a little bit of a briefing moving forward into tonight. I'm going to start with a timeline. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll start by saying this, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, in terms of what causes these situations. The police use of force serves as an igniter, there's no doubt, but to an already volatile situation, a volatile mix of urban pathologies, failed urban policy that exacerbates inescapable poverty, failing public schools, inadequate parenting, father-absent homes. We all know when fathers are not around to shape the behavior of young boys, they oftentimes grow up to be unmanageable misfits that the police have to deal with in an aggressive fashion. Pathologies like lifestyle choices, questionable lifestyle choices, gang involvement, drug and alcohol abuse, as well as massive unemployment. Those are the ingredients. Those are the things that cause resentment, anger, and frustration to boil beneath the surface, and then all of a sudden a police situation comes along, and that's why I said it's an igniter, but it's an igniter to an already festering situation. So, you know, this whole last couple of years coming out of Ferguson, there's been a lot of focus on police and police use of force, and that's fine by me. All right, we get our consent from, our authority from the consent of the government. If something's bothering them, we should have discussions about it. But this thing has been hijacked for a political construct now. I mentioned that 2 years ago. If you want to go back and look at some of the tapes, I said this was a political construct, this whole war on police. And that, in fact, was a war on police that mirrored what had gone on in the 1960s. Same thing, same model, same subversive groups involved, with different names now, different generation, of course, as all those folks from the Students for a Democratic Society got old, and they're probably senior citizens now and a little tired for this, or tired of it. So I was acutely aware of what was going on and exposed it as such. So we get into what happened last night. You all received a briefing from the Milwaukee Police Department this afternoon. Squads made a traffic stop. Occupants got out of the car and confronted the police. At least one was armed. They may both have been armed, but I'm aware that one was armed. And an officer used force, fearing that his life was in danger, and it's an ongoing investigation, and that'll sort itself out as time moves forward. And then late last night, some of the residual effect of the thing that I opened up talking about, the anger, the resentment, the frustration in people boiled over, and we had an untenable situation in Milwaukee. I've made it clear as it related to the riots of Ferguson and of Baltimore that people have to find a more socially acceptable way to deal with their frustration, their anger, and their resentment. All right, this is an orderly society. We have processes, we have institutions with which to deal with these things. And as frustrating as it can be, sometimes it takes a long time to work through the institutions and the processes that we have. It's still what we have to do, because we cannot have the social upheaval, the chaos that we saw last night that frightens good law-abiding people in those neighborhoods. It destroyed businesses where people work, some probably as a means to support their family, and they're going to have to deal with that. But I made it clear this afternoon in some discussions that I have, the goal moving forward is that we cannot have a repeat. I didn't say we wouldn't. I said we cannot have a repeat of what happened last night. Some additional forces have been mobilized and put together. A plan is in place. That plan is fluid. It involves a lot of my resources. I made a call up of all of our personnel this morning to be on standby. They're actually mobilized. You cannot wait too long, as they found out in Ferguson when the mayor put out the call to the governor, and those additional resources never showed up, or showed up late. In Baltimore, the call was never made. I have an obligation, folks, under the state statutes. I also have an obligation under the oath that I took to preserve and protect life and property. All right, that's job one. And to the extent that I have that responsibility, I have to have resources, and I have to make sure that the people that I put in harm's way, like I did last night, like I'll do when these situations arise, that they have the resources necessary to complete the mission. All right, what's the mission? Job one, preservation of life and property. It's a pretty clear mission. So you apply your resources to do that, and you go back, you reassess, hopefully a minimal amount of damage, minimal life or injury, I should say, to life, and hopefully, so far it's been the case after last night, other than the officer use of force, nobody else killed. But I think it's important to point out as well, because we tend to gloss over this stuff. We keep focusing on the police. We keep focusing on the police. And I've said publicly before, stop trying to fix the police, fix the ghetto. And I talked about those urban pathologies that have to be addressed to shrink the size of the underclass. We have the growth of an underclass here in Milwaukee. You saw some of their behaviors on display last night. So you shrink the size of the underclass. How do you do that? You reduce poverty. You fix the schools. You put people back to work, meaningful work. You hold people accountable for effective parenting and some of those lifestyle choices, which sometimes means if they're going to go out and engage in certain behaviors that society says we're not going to put up with, then there have to be sanctions, and that's where the criminal justice system comes in. That's where the prosecutor's office comes in. And if I look around, just about everybody in this room has heard me over the last 5 years, minimum, talking about the role of the criminal justice system, the prosecutor's office, the sentencing practices in this area in Milwaukee County. And I don't know, I guess people didn't think it played a big role, but we're seeing it now. Not just last night, but we're seeing it time and time again. When some individual goes out and does something heinous, we look and they have a long, lengthy criminal history that nobody applied any sanctions to, or any meaningful sanctions, let's put it that way. Maybe some sanctions, slap on the wrist is a sanction, but that's not meaningful. So as I look at the two individuals involved in the traffic stop last night, I have their criminal histories in front of me. We will provide their booking photos later on. Fran will put that out. But as I look, the individual who lost his life, "13 arrests, some serious stuff, recklessly endangering safety, the felony, first degree, felony, dismissed." I don't know why. I don't have the reason, but somebody, it isn't going to be me. I guess if you all have an interest, you'll go back and start peeling back the layers to find out what happened. Sometimes this is no fault of the prosecutor. If you can't get, or she can't get, the witnesses to cooperate, I understand that. But that tells the individual who was involved in it that not much is going to happen, and they tend to repeat the behavior. That's how human behavior works. You punish unwanted behavior, you'll see less of it. You do nothing about unwanted behavior, you're going to see a repeat and more of it. It's got a bunch of drug arrests here. Robbery, use of force, no prosecution. I don't know why. I'm not going to blast the prosecutor's office at this point. However, somebody ought to go back and look and see why. There has to be a reason. That's called accountability. If the DA says, hey, we tried, the victims bailed on us, I get that. But if this is one of these second chance, deferred, those are the sorts of things I think that are having a detrimental effect to this community. The second guy, the guy who lived, who's in custody now, possession of a dangerous weapon under 18, dismissed. Some drug dealing, 2-year probation, interlock system, time served, 12 days. It's pretty light sanctions. 2 counts of bail jumping, 2 years probation, time served, 45 days. Another possession of cocaine, probation violation. He's on probation. That means he's been given his chance. In one of these earlier arrests, he's been given his chance. Son, we're going to put you on probation. We're going to give you a chance. You got to walk the straight and narrow. He does not walk the straight and narrow. Gets arrested several times for probation violation. He gets time served 30 days, time served 45 days. It's why we continue to see the behavior repeated.
Fix the ghetto. That was a very eloquent and detailed response by Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke that we've been listening to, going through a litany of societal problems that have led to some of the unrest and violence that we have seen in the aftermath of some of these police shootings, pointing out that the suspect in this one in Milwaukee last night, 23-year-old Seville Smith, had a lengthy arrest record, 13 arrests, including some felony accounts, some that were dismissed, and the man that Seville Smith was with in that car when the shooting happened also has a lengthy arrest record and was on probation. The police officer involved in the shooting, we were told, African-American, and police certainly showing a great resolve as well as restraint. Last night, we were told earlier, they did not fire one shot. They did not use any force, yet the authorities said there were 48 shots fired in that crowd of people when they were rioting. And Arthel, you have to wonder that if there was a dead cop that we would be mourning right now, is if some of those folks were out there in Milwaukee last night causing such destruction and damage, if they would show up at a vigil, a candlelight vigil for police officers slain in the line of duty, as sad as any loss of life is. But clearly, Sheriff Clarke just saying he cannot guarantee what can happen tonight. National Guard on standby, basically, not deployed, as sunset in Milwaukee is about 2.5 hours from now.